Well, hello everyone. My name is Jerry Wise, and I want to thank you for joining me this evening. I kind of titled this 90 Minutes with Jerry Wise to give people an opportunity to volley some questions at me. Many people who have watched my videos have lots of questions, and I will also get them in emails, and it's sometimes very difficult to answer them via email because I get so many of them. And I was just trying to figure out how to do the live. Maybe I have a help from, hi Kelly, I have help from Rinda Smith, who is helping me tonight. She is a therapist and life coach, and you can find her at Family Tree Counseling. You can also find her at Rinspire on the, hi Andrew, Rinspire on the web. I wanted to share a few things that are happening with me and that I'm looking forward to here. You can find me at www.jerrywiserelationshipsystems.com, and you can also find me at the same name on Facebook, Jerry Wise Relationship Systems. You can find me on the Facebook page. I've just posted a few quotes up there recently that you might enjoy. And I wanted to tell you that I have some things that are in the works that a number of people are looking forward to. Is a workshop on Zoom where they can attend a workshop. I have a number of people that have been working very hard on self-differentiation. They're adult children of alcoholics, they're adult children of narcissists, they're folks who have been severe codependents, people who have struggled with narcissistic abuse, and this is an opportunity to learn how to find yourself, be yourself, and learn family system dynamics. I had a client today who asked me, well, Jerry, how do I go about this work of having a self? And I say, well, there are two things that are important. One is to work on that enmeshment, or that you have with your family of origin and with other people, an overfusion of yourself and them, which causes lots of problems. And hi, Sumit. And then secondly, it's learning family systems, perspective, and dynamics. We do learn some skills in self-differentiation, and and we also want to train our minds to learn to see things differently and from a broader or zoomed out perspective. Many times that will help us with enmeshment and fusion if we reframe our family of origin and how we interact with them, and we reframe the dynamics we have with a spouse or our family or our children, or even at work. And so if we learn those kinds of skills and also those types of perspectives, that can really make a big difference. Hi, Joan. I did want to share with you that there was someone wrote me today, and I can't say their name, and in fact I don't remember their name. They asked me if I would do a video about self-differentiation, in which I would tell him or teach others or teach him how to use different words and language that really create a sense of self-differentiation or a sense of detachment or neutrality. And he said and he gave me this vignette, he gave me this example of what he used with his family of origin, I believe. And he talked about his family, and when someone said to him something that they had typically said in their family, which was a very enmeshing or very deriding statement, he was able to respond back in a non-reactive way. And he used those words. And inside, he said, having used those words, he felt very free, and he felt like for the first time he hadn't gotten caught up or caught in his family dynamics near as much as he had in the past. And he was so excited about that. He wanted to share that with me. He said, hey, why don't you teach people words that they can say? Now, he's absolutely right. I do role plays with my clients all the time. I try to offer them a new way of speaking that teaches them or utilizes family systems dynamics, and also is a modeling for self-differentiation. And now, he was simply thinking that if you just use these words in a certain way, like that would be all what you would need to be so free or neutral or feel less enmeshed. And I think there's a little more to it. And I wanted to write him back and tell him I think there's more to it than just those words. I'm not against those words. I think I definitely teach people to use certain phrases and words that illustrate their and demonstrate and come out of their desire to be differentiated from their family of origin or forever, or from others, for others. And I see Joan is promoting the whole view of role playing. We've done lots of role playing, and I think I remember going to a therapist who was a Murray Bowen family therapist, and in fact my first supervisor in seminary, when I was in seminary, Dr. Stoneberg, was excellent at role-playing. Reggie, who was a therapist I had, who was also a marriage and family therapist and a Bowen Family Systems, and he did role-plays, and the role-plays really took me out of myself, because I'd play the... I played the family member, and of course I knew how to act with them because I knew how my family acted. I knew how others acted. I knew how other friends acted. I knew how other church members acted. And so I could act them. What I didn't know was how to change how I act and how I feel and how I see it. So he played the objective, self-differentiated Jerry for me. And that was so useful and so helpful to do that. And I'd walk away going, how did he know how to say those things? How did he? That was so good. Because he was neutral and non-reactive. I was not. I was very, very reactive and really caught up in the situation. So it was very difficult for me to be neutral, detached, self-differentiated when I interacted with other people. And so he helped me to practice that. And actually what was happening is he was letting me borrow his objectivity. And I think that's where I hope therapists and coaches will utilize their objectivity for their clients and let them borrow that. Dr. Stoneberg didn't want me to be him. Dr. Stoneberg wanted me to be me as a self-differentiated person. So he didn't say just do what I do. He said this is good for all of us. This is maturity. And let me role play that for you, and then let's examine it and discuss it. But even the role play itself was very powerful, because it got me thinking in ways and him responding in ways I never would have thought of doing with other people. It wouldn't have even come to me. Why would it not come to me? because I have observational blindness, because I'm stuck in my paradigm and how I see the relationship, how I see the other person, how I see myself. He could step out of that and play me while responding to them in a very adult way. And I'm going, oh my gosh, that's incredible. I also wanted to mention to you before I move on, there's a couple of questions I have. I've got the workshop that's coming up on Zoom that I'll let everybody know. If you go to my website, you can sign up for my email list, and then you'll get notified about that workshop. I also have found more material that I have done that I'm also going to put up on Vimeo, and I have some pay-per-view workshops on Vimeo that you can go and take advantage of. And then some new material I found was on self-differentiation and codependency. And someone I saw in the stream of comments, someone I saw mentioned how much they appreciated Codependent No More, or Beyond Codependency, or the Melody Beatty material, which is excellent. It's all excellent. The only thing I found when I was beginning to recover from codependency, I found those books very helpful. So I'm not deriding them at all. I encourage people to read them all the time. I just know they have limitations because they're not family systems oriented. They're more individualistic oriented. And I think that's where we get into trouble. And I was talking to another client today who was saying, who had confronted a brother-in-law with her own boundaries and her own, what do I want to say? She wanted to declare herself and her own boundaries with her brother-in-law, and saying, please don't plan on doing that without in the future checking with me and asking me first. And I said, you have every right to say that to your brother-in-law. Now, her brother-in-law got very quiet, kind of upset, and kind of has withdrawn from the client that I was talking to. And I said, well, I can tell you why he did that. Not because he did it out of maturity. I didn't say that. Nor did he do it because you were doing something, quote, wrong. You have every right to state your boundaries. You have every right to tell him what you want and what you think and what you believe and what your boundaries are. The thing you did not do was take into account what you've been doing for the last 25 years. That's what you didn't do. You just changed and wondered why everybody doesn't just accept it and think it's all okay. That now you have boundaries, and why don't you just accept it? I'm mature now, and you're not. And here I go. And that's where we have the problem of dropping the bomb. When someone comes home for family dinner and then they drop the bomb, and oh, by the way, I'm not going to do that anymore. And that rather than going and saying, hey, I know for the last 25 years I've been doing this. Whatever you've said, brother-in-law, we do. And I've always gone along with that. Now, all of a sudden, I don't want to go along with that. So I'm just telling you, and you should be okay with it. No, that's reactivity with boundaries. The other is reactivity with compliance. What if we do it without reactivity? And that would be to understand the whole system. Hey, brother-in-law, I know we've always gone along with whatever you've decided to do. I'm in the process of making changes, and I wanted to let you know we can do what you've planned when we come and get together soon. But in the future, one thing I'd like to ask if you could ask me first, or ask us first, before you make those plans. And that would be really appreciative. But I understand you haven't, the whole point of it is you haven't seen this new me for 25 years. And then when I all of a sudden become a new me, I expect you to just be okay with it. That's dropping the bomb. And that's not taking full responsibility for your part in the pattern and the cycle. Take your complete part. You have every right to have boundaries. She has every right to ask her brother-in-law to do things and to change, and or every right for her to change. But what I'm saying is that she wasn't taking the whole system into account, because she said, oh, I probably wouldn't have pushed my brother-in-law away so much if I would have talked to you before I did that. And I said, you weren't wrong. You have a right for boundaries. You can state them any way you want. But I like stating them in as mature and appropriate way as I can, which means I take full responsibility for my part in the cycle for the last 25 years. And that's where sometimes we don't do that. Now, I'm not talking where there's abuse involved. Where there's abuse involved, that must stop. I can't, though we still should take responsibility for our own part in that cycle where we have either stayed or felt intimidated or, didn't get the help we needed or whatever we needed to do. But it still must stop. And it doesn't matter whether there's a bomb or not a bomb. But when we're talking about neurotic relationships of people we want to continue to have a relationship with, then we want to take in the full picture of the system when we start asserting our boundaries. And so when I went off on that rabbit trail to talk about how Codependent No More and those kinds of books, though very good, don't take in fully a family systems approach, which I think is even more helpful. So I read those. So exactly, somebody's codependent and just discovered they were codependent, I would say go read Melody Beattie's Codependent No More, Beyond Codependency, or, one of the main codependent books, Claudia Black, though she tends to be more ACOA. But read Melody Beattie on codependency, and also read Jenny Brown, Growing Yourself Up, so you have two sides you have the individual approach and the family systems approach together. And that's going to, I think, produce the most wisdom for you. Because one will deal with enmeshment and the other will deal with identifying what codependency is about. But Codependent or Growing Yourself Up by Jenny Brown, I think would help you. And by the way, Rinda is here. She's just off camera. She's helping me out tonight, kindly. That it provides a way to begin to de-enmesh, because the calmness and de-enmeshment is everything. That will help you negotiate relationships in a way you can't imagine if you can learn to do that. And I believe you can learn to do that. If I can learn to do that, anybody can learn to do that. So I've got self-differentiation and codependency coming up, which is a codependency. And I found a 90-minute workshop. I think I'd like, and I'm looking for the part B of it so that I could maybe do like a 3-hour workshop and put it up on codependency and self-differentiation. And codependency and self-differentiation, and I hope you will benefit from that. Watch for that. You might join Jerry Wise On Demand on video. If you join the Vimeo, Jerry Wise On Demand, you can then those will be made available to you. Let's see here. And truly love. Okay. Lisa from Ireland. Have you a way, here's a question, to just push all this aside and truly love ourselves? Well, that sounds somewhat like a how question. In other words, how can you love yourself? I think you already know, though I will say we can have difficulties knowing what normal is. So I'm not saying our knowing is a full knowing, but many times we do know what it would entail to love ourselves, but yet we are not ready to do it. And so if you say, how can we push all this aside and truly love ourselves? What I would do with someone who's stating that to me as a client and saying, Jerry, help me with that, then what I would do would be to talk to them about, can they accept themselves right where they are and recognize they are not ready to love themselves? And can they look at what are the downsides if they were to love themselves? Because there's where the secrets and the roots are. The downsides to the good thing. And then self-love starts to become more organic when they start, because many people don't love themselves. Now, not accepting me not loving myself is a part of not loving myself. So I want to first start by loving myself in accepting that I don't love myself, if that makes sense. And it sounds kind of a riddle, it sounds kind of paradoxical, but it really is what's happening at the time. And we don't accept ourselves in not loving ourselves. We just keep beating ourselves saying, you need to love yourself, you need to love yourself. And we whip ourselves on the back, waiting for us to love ourselves, rather than, well, why don't you love yourself not loving yourself? How about we start there and accept that you don't, and that there may be good reasons why you don't. And let's take a look at those downsides. Because if you loved yourself, you might change relationships. If you loved yourself, you might have to let go of a child. If you loved yourself, you might have to change jobs. There's a lot of scary things. If you loved yourself, you wouldn't put up with your mom or dad's abuse, etc., etc. And so there can be lots of downsides for loving yourself. Most people think it's just all positive if we love ourselves. And it really isn't all positive if we love ourselves. The good things are not all positive. And in fact, the bad things and down things can have lots of upsides. Not having self-esteem can keep a lot of people safe. I wouldn't tell someone, hey, thank you, Mark.
Sure.
It's good to see you.
Love you, man.
Hi, guys. This is Mark and me.
Enjoy the feast of Jerry's wisdom.
Oh, my. Have a good night. For example, if someone's in a horrible example, if someone's in a concentration camp, I would not suggest they do the good things of having lots of self-esteem and lots of assertiveness. It would be dysfunctional. It would be very dysfunctional. I wouldn't encourage that. That's going to cause lots of problems, if not your own death. So in another way, in a dysfunctional family, if you're weak, don't love yourself, easily hurt, well, I wouldn't say stand up and pound the drums and tell everybody about themselves. I really wouldn't do that. You're going to get eaten alive. So you need to work on strengthening you, and maybe even removing yourself from the concentration camp, or removing yourself from the dysfunctional family, or getting some distance there where you can begin to assert yourself. And that's something I work with people on every day. I hope that helps, Lisa. And I'm glad from Ireland. I have a couple clients from Ireland, and that's great. To go along with loving yourself, what are some examples of loving yourself? Well, one example would be accepting your downsides. Accepting that sometimes you're stupid. Sometimes you make mistakes. Sometimes you don't love yourself. Sometimes can you accept yourself, which is self-love? When we keep beating ourselves and going, gosh, I need to love myself. Why don't you love yourself? You ought to love yourself more. That's just self-abandonment and self-hate is what that is. And by the way, if you want a really, really good video on self-hate, Teal Swan has, I know I'm not saying all of her videos are good. That one video, only one, I would suggest. But not, I don't endorse everything Teal Swan says or does, but I just, self-hate, she did a good job with. And you can take a look at that one. But the beating of the self-hate and all of that, that's self-abandonment and, a lack of self-love. And so self-acceptance is self-love. Self-caring, doing things that include you in the relationship, dynamic. In other words, I'm going to approach this without just abandoning myself and without just de-selfing. I'm going to do this with them with a little more self. That's self-love. Maybe it's not total self-love or total self-acceptance, but we begin to work on in selfing ourselves rather than de-selfing. Codependency is the actions of de-selfing ourselves. In other words, I don't matter, you matter. What I feel doesn't matter, what you feel matters. Or some people use the plus minus. You're plus, I'm minus, rather than plus plus. The narcissist is I'm a plus and you're a minus. The codependent is I'm a minus, you're a plus. And we relate in that way. And so what we want to do is get the plus on our side. And that's a part of the self-love. Another way to love yourself is find out what you don't like about yourself or what you hate about yourself. I remember very early on the difficulty I had with and I remember being in a group. I had a great supervisor, though he was absolutely brutal. But he was doing it on purpose because he wanted us to really learn. But boy, it was rough, especially for a codependent like me. And I didn't want to feel stupid. So I always managed to make sure I didn't want to feel stupid, because I thought I was stupid. So I didn't want anybody to see that. So I just made sure everybody didn't know that. But he knew I was trying to keep that a secret. He was good. And he knew I was trying to keep it a secret. And he said, well, Jerry, what bothers you? Why are you so uptight? Then I finally broke down and said, well, I just have this aversion to being seen as stupid, which was a part of my shame. Feeling shameful, feeling stupid. And he goes, why? I don't care whether you're stupid or not. I don't care whether you feel ashamed or not. That's your business. I'm not worried about that. Now, you may be worried about that, but I just want you to know I'm going to go around the room and see if anybody else is worrying about it. Nobody's worried about it. Jerry, you're worried that all of us are worried about it, and we're not worried about it. Because we all know we're stupid too. We all do stupid things. We all have those sides. And he began to help me normalize and that I could accept the part of me that was stupid. Because we all have a jerk side or a stupid side or a we don't know something side. Or we all have that. But I just couldn't accept that in me because that was too shameful. And he helped me to work through that. So those are some ways or some things about self-love. That's not an exhaustive discussion on self-love, but at least is some comments on self-love. So we want to, well, let me see here. I've got another question here. Someone I have done nothing but good things for and love. Why? And this comes from Jackie. And I am angry because I don't understand why I am verbally abused by someone I have done nothing but good things for and love. Why? You would wonder why you would feel angry? Well, my hunch is you have two angers. One would be at them, and one would be at you. Because we are deselfing when we only do nothing but good things and love someone, and we get verbally abused or have some abuse come back to us. That is not self-love or self-caring. And that just because the other thing we tend to do is we think as codependent, anyway, I would think this way as codependent, that if I do things for someone and love them, that they owe me to treat me right. And that I need to keep doing those things to somehow get them to behave or treat me right or love me right in the right way. That doesn't work always in relationships. In many relationships, it doesn't work that way. And in many situations, it didn't work that way. It didn't work that way when we were growing up in our family of origin. So I would go back and find out what maybe the source or root of my anger has been, going back to family of origin. And I would go back and take a look at family of origin and where my anger began, because it probably began way back there. Even if we're having it with a relationship now, it began way back there. Where was someone treating you badly even though you were loving them and doing good things for them? Usually that's something that we've learned as children. And that might be a way and a place to take a look at that. I have another question. Oh, this is Soren. Jerry, I got into a screaming match with my parents. Flipped out, cussed at them, it got nasty. Told my dad I won't be attending his funeral. Reactivity is a real issue. What are your thoughts? I'm sorry to hear that, Soren, and I'm sorry to hear, Jackie, that you're also, are being verbally abused. That's not good. It's not appropriate. It's not love. And Soren, I'm sorry you got into a major reactivity with your parents. Certainly reactivity is a real issue. And that's where we have to begin to address our reactivity first. Because it's out of reactivity that we'll say rash and harsh things, and things we may not want to consider as permanent, like I'll never be at your funeral. Now, you don't have to go to your dad's funeral. There's no law that says you have to go to your father's funeral. Your dad's an adult and you're an adult. If you really want to do that, but I would like to explore with a client who has that kind of dilemma, is it truly they really don't want to go to the funeral, or are they doing it out of reactivity? Because I want to help them become more neutral about their parents and more neutral about their family of origin. Also, I refuse, and I would begin to refuse, to be in a screaming match. I already know if I'm ready to scream, I'm already reactive. Nothing good will come after this point. Nobody's listening. Nobody, just because we say it louder doesn't mean it gets heard more. And so I want to be rational and reasonable about screaming's not going to solve anything. Certainly my screaming's not going to solve anything. And it's much like with kids. If your kids can get you upset, they win. And I don't want my family of origin to win. I don't want my kids to win. I want to be a mature adult or a mature parent or mature. And so what you want to do is you don't want to play that game. And what we're playing is the game of reactivity. And then we usually end up feeling bad later, or we feel justified. Well, they deserve me cussing at them, and they deserve me flipping out, and me being nasty because they were being awful. Well, whether they deserved it or not, I don't know. But again, deserving, screaming, flipping out, cussing, not attending a funeral all sounds like reactivity. that's not the same thing as maturity. Um, and I see the well, and it's very difficult to be rational with people who are irrational. And when people are irrational, I'm not trying to be rational to cause them to change. I want to be rational for me to be me. They may not change and probably won't. So I either need to exit or, leave, or say, when we're calmed down, maybe we can talk about this again. Obviously, we're too upset to discuss this, or at least I am. I'm too upset to discuss this, so I'll get back with you. And it is difficult to deal with an irrational family. The best way to deal with an irrational family is to stop dealing with them. And I don't mean no contact, though it can mean that. But I mean dealing with them internally, accepting they're not going to change. And if they're not going to change, then how shall I then relate to them? What are you going to do as an adult if they're not going to change? How are you going to relate to them? What kind of relationship do you want to have? And I have people say, yeah, but if they're not going to change, I don't know what I'm going to do. The reason you don't know what you're going to do is because you haven't accepted they're not going to change yet. That's why you don't know what you're going to do. Once you accept them that, hey, they're not going to change, you then start thinking about, oh, well, I guess this is what I'll have to do, or I want to do, or what do I want to do? What kind of relationship? Maybe I want 15 minutes of coffee at McDonald's where we can't explode. That's what I'm going to do. Because I don't want to get into those kind of fights and arguments. And we do have the holidays coming up very soon, and that's going to be a real challenge for lots of people and bring up lots of issues and reactivity for them. And it's really a good time to do that self-differentiation work during the holidays because we have that family of origin contact for many people. I hope that helps some, Soren. And Angela writes, how do you cope with the feelings of family cutoff? Well, I would want to ask you about, are you cut off from them? Are you cutting off from them, or are they cut off from you? Because just because someone's cut off doesn't mean I am. Someone can cut off from me, but that doesn't mean I cut off from them. Now, we may not see each other, but that doesn't mean I'm cut off from them. Because cut off is an immature emotional state. No contact is an immature adult emotional choice. Cut off is an immature emotional experience because we can't handle the relationship, so we then cut off internally. And so, I'm not sure, Angela, who you're talking about, your family or you. If you're talking about you feeling cut off from your family, then you might want to work on that and resolve that. Maybe there's some good reasons why you would have no contact with your family. But I would say you need to stay in contact with your family so you can resolve your issues. And when I say in contact, people sometimes misinterpret what I'm saying. And they think what I'm saying is go be a doormat and go be their best friend. And that's not what I mean. What I mean is we stay in emotional contact with the family inside of us, which may include interacting with our family of origin. It might not. And work through those family of origin issues. So I resolve the cutoff, and I can decide, do I want to go no contact, or do I want to have some relationship with them in which I avoid the minefields and in which I have less observational blindness and I have greater self-differentiation as I relate to my family of origin. I hope that makes some sense. And maybe you can replay this, because I know I'm saying a lot in a short period of time, and you could go over that again. And I have a lot of folks who have, holiday things coming up, and their family members are either estranged, or they feel cut off, or the family is cut off from them, and they're not sure what to do for the holidays. And of course, I always ask, well, what would you like to do if you could do anything? And might you consider doing that? But let's, whatever changes you're going to make in the family system, let's be fully responsible for your pattern and your raising your hand and being a part of the family system for many years, but yet you decide that you want to do something different. I have several clients who are saying, hey, and one in particular I remember, and she wants to go and visit her family back in a European country, but she does not want to stay in the house with them. She would like to stay in a hotel. And that is just considered crazy for her family. I mean, just spending the money for it. Why would you want to spend your time in the hotel and not with us when you're back here for the holidays? That's just insane. You're wasting money. And all of that is enmeshment talk. All of that is enmeshment, pulling of enmeshment on her. She can clearly afford staying in a hotel. She makes more money than most people in the family, and it's no problem for her. She knows how difficult it is to spend all that holiday time so closely that what I want to say, it's so she what do I want to say, she's so closely enmeshed with them, and also how they view and how they frame everything, that it feels like so much guilt for her to stay in a hotel, because that's what she would prefer to do. And so she's working on doing that and saying, hey, guys, I've always stayed here. I've always stayed with the family. I understand that. It's not that I don't care about you. I'm an adult, and I'm in my 40s, and I'd prefer to stay in a hotel in this when I come to visit you for the holidays. And we can have family Christmas dinner, Thanksgiving dinner. Well, they don't have Thanksgiving. It'd be Christmas. U.S. has Thanksgiving, and Canada, I think, has Thanksgiving. But I'll come for Christmas dinner. We'll celebrate that. No problem. I'll enjoy that. I'll spend time with the family. But I'd really like to spend some time with myself during that time. And she really expects to get a lot of pushback on that. But she's working on doing that, taking full responsibility, and also practicing what is she going to counter when her family says, yeah, but that's just a waste of money. That's a waste of money, and why aren't you staying with us? Don't you love us as your parents? Children are supposed to come back. And of course you say, I'm sorry, I don't agree with that. I don't feel it's a waste of money. I think it's a very good use of my money. Second of all, it does not represent I don't care about you. Thirdly, I don't agree with you, and I see it differently, that it's only I love you if I come and stay with you. That is not the only way to express my love for you. I'm looking forward to coming to Christmas, this Christmas, and staying in a hotel. And looking forward to that. The first Christmas will be the most difficult because it's new. The first Christmas is most difficult because it's the newest change. And they will certainly, either before Christmas or during, want you to change back. And if you go through the stages of resistance, you can create a new self in the family. The first stage is, hey, why are you doing this? You know, that doesn't really make sense. Second stage is, you really need to stop and you need to change back. No, we want you to stay with your parents for Christmas and not stay at a hotel. Come on, that's just ridiculous. Then the third stage is change back or else. If you don't change back, then, you know, there's going to be consequences. If you can go through all of those stages, then the high anxiety will drop down and they have to deal with the new you. And if you're willing to hang in there and be self-differentiated, you can develop a new you in the family, and they can decide, hey, if they want you in the family, then they got to take you in the hotel. If they don't, hey, I'm not cutting off from you guys. If you want to cut off from me, you can, but I'd prefer you not. But, you know, you're adults. You can hate me for staying in a hotel if you want. You know, I don't have to change your opinion about it. And you can even say, I think it's a total waste of money that you stay in that hotel. I understand. You think it's a total waste of money that I stay in the hotel. I'm saying that. I understand that's how you feel. I see it differently. I am different. And that's not how I see it. And I don't expect you to change your view. You don't have to change your view at all. But I am staying in a hotel. Because I see it differently. But you're free to tell anybody you want that my daughter is totally nuts for staying in a hotel. I don't know why she would be doing that. That's crazy. Daughters don't do that. And, you know, and I think, and I've even told my mother, other people that, hey, you can tell that to anybody you want. I'm not asking you to change your opinion. I'm just suggesting that I don't, and I'm stating that I don't see it that way. I don't agree. I don't think it's a waste of money for me to stay in the hotel. Or for me to come on Christmas Eve rather than Christmas Day. Or for me to celebrate Christmas with you the Monday after Christmas rather than Christmas Day. Or because, Christmas is a artificial holiday anyway. And I mean artificial, coming from a Christian background. That's not when the date Jesus was born. I mean, I don't think any historian or even any theologian believes he was born on December the 25th. It's a made-up holiday. Now, I'm not saying it shouldn't be celebrated by those who celebrate the Christian faith, but when we just make it legalistically a problem where if you don't come on Christmas, we're not going to love you anymore. Well, that kind of misses the whole Christian message, I think. Especially when it's December the 25th and he never was really born on December the 25th. So, it is, we need to be realistic about, these types of holidays and family events. And the first person that needs to be realistic is me. I understand they're going to have a hard time with it. The family's going to have a hard time with it. And I accept that. They're going to have a hard time with that. But I'm going to do what I believe it's important to do. And I'm still going to show up. I'm still going to be there. And maybe they won't talk to me. And maybe they'll be mad. And I'll go, okay. Because you've already worked through, you accept the family where they are. And you don't need them. You don't need your family for anything. You don't need them. You can want them. You can choose to be in a relationship with them. But you don't need them. You're an adult. They're adults. What? You don't need parents anymore. You may have a mother and father and sister and brother, but it's not need. You don't have dependency needs that you have to have them. So we kind of let them go while accepting who they are. And then we can be with them more easily. It's being with them more easily. Let me get a drink of my Powerade Zero, which I like. I've been talking a while, so I'm going to take just a little break. let's see. I feel like self. Okay. I was an advertisement. You mean for Powerade Zero? Well, it just doesn't have any sugar. I even have people complain to me saying this isn't even healthy to drink. So I mean, everybody's got an opinion about everything, but at least it's 0 calories and it doesn't have any sugar. So that's why I drink it. And I've got to have a certain amount of fluid during the day, so I do that. Soren writes another question. And by the way, Lisa, if you're watching, I've got your question here, and I'm going to go to that one next. And somebody said, we know your secret now, Jerry. Powerade Zero. That's the secret. I tell you, if I had a magic wand, if I had a secret, I would be on a beach somewhere, enjoying myself. Soren says, I feel like self-love means that my relationship to my current friends and family will be severely limited. Do we just accept that? Is that a natural consequence of self-love? Well, I think it can be a natural consequence of selfing, of being a self, because we have created all these pretzel relationships that we've been in, where I come as a half self, they come as a half self, and we have all these relationships, or I come as a no self, and they come as a 150 self, which is more the narcissistic, and we have a lot of unhealthy relationships. Now, I don't think that means I need to reject everybody in my relationship pool. What I chose to do, and what I felt was healthy to do, is I'm going to begin to do self-love, self-care, and begin to be myself. And those that can accept or love me or care about me will stay. Those who don't, won't. And if those who don't, won't, and they leave, then why are you in a relationship with them anyway? What does, now I mean, if it brings you something positive, okay, but just accept the full limitation of that relationship. Maybe the only reason I'm friends with them is because they like going to the golfing range. Okay, well, that's maybe you like going to the golfing range. Keep that friend as a golfing range friend, but don't expect that friend to be intimate with you or accepting you and yourself. If that's not what he can do, then you just keep him from the golf range. You enjoy that together, and that's the limitation. That's where your lives intersect. But you're not going to be able to intersect very much. I'm talking about two circles that are overlapping. I don't mean enmeshment, but I mean where we would overlap in terms of our interests or things like that. And then as you begin to love yourself, and as you begin to self-differentiate, then you will find you will become attracted to other folks who might have a higher level of self-differentiation and will accept you more. And you will not have to make those changes between, do I keep these relationships or do I be myself? And you won't have to make that choice, which is so difficult. We have to make that choice because we're in some relationships that are probably immature in some ways, and that's why we have to make those choices. Now, let me tell you, I don't tell anybody they should self-differentiate. It's hard work. It's a road less traveled. It's not what everybody wants to do. Not everybody's going to do it. So for those who want to take that journey, I think there's a way to do that. But there's lots of difficulties with it. There's pain. There's resolving or letting go of illusions, letting go of myths, looking at things differently, loving yourself, possibly losing some friends that you thought were your friends. So there's a lot of downsides. just like when I remember in doing marriage therapy years ago with couples, and I would talk about the one thing I need to tell you is this process could be hazardous to your marriage. And I go, well, why are we here? We're here to make our marriage wonderful. I agree that's what you want. I have no doubt that that's what you're hoping would happen. But I'm just saying, if someone really changes or really grows, or if somebody grows beyond another person and you don't stay in your current status and current dynamics, that could threaten the relationship. So you need to know that as well. And I know for AAMFT, that's kind of a warning they put in their material and state when someone comes and wants marriage therapy. That's you put that warning out there that this could also not cause you to get better as a couple. Now, we hope that it would, and that's what you're coming for. But when you start messing with people growing, and when people start becoming more self-differentiated, and when people start resolving their issues, that is perturbing the system. That's really shaking the system up. And it doesn't always come out the way you expected. And so we have to be mature about that too. And I remember telling a couple once that, I don't think you're ready for what I would be offering to you as a therapist at that time, and that I would suggest you go and see this person because they probably wouldn't challenge you in those ways, and you could then maintain your relationship, see if you could make some improvements without getting to the root of things. At least that was my thinking, and I did share with them and referred them to another, because I didn't want to be the cause of their, and I really felt that's where it would probably go. And I thought, well, they want to stay together, then go see Joe Blow, who will just do simple kind of things and try to help you a little bit here, a little bit there, and that's probably what you need. I just don't want to do that. That's just not my style. It's not my philosophy. It's not my theoretical orientation. So I'll send you to somebody that might be. And if you don't like that, then you can come back to me and decide you want to do deeper or harder work. That's fine too. But I do care about the people who come to me and try to assess what they're, what they're really needing, what they're really wanting. I have a friend who had sent a question. She was saying, if you're experiencing narcissistic abuse in a marriage and your spouse or whoever is a narcissist or in that way, how do you know if you're suffering from Stockholm Syndrome? And I think that's a very interesting question. May even be a question beyond my skill and ability. I'm not an expert on Stockholm Syndrome, but I have some awareness of what it is. I don't treat it every day. I don't talk to people. But I think you can have a big S Stockholm Syndrome and you can have a little s Stockholm Syndrome. And, I think one of the things, I think it's always difficult when somebody says, how do I know if I'm experiencing narcissism? No, let me say it a different way. I will ask someone, have you ever had panic attacks? And they would say, I don't know. What is a panic attack? And then, do you know what I tell them? No, you haven't had one. Because if you've had a panic attack, you may not know all the clinical information about it, but if you've had a panic attack, you probably have you're probably going to go, oh, I know what that is, or yeah, I have. And I think much is true about, like with the Stockholm Syndrome. With the Stockholm Syndrome, that's a syndrome in which we, I have a video on what topic? Oh, put that on there. Sorry. if someone may not be aware of the Stockholm Syndrome that they're experiencing, and for those of you who may not know what Stockholm Syndrome is, it was like back in 1967 or 70s or late 60s or whatever. There was a bank in Stockholm, Sweden that was taken over by terrorists or kidnappers and robbers. There were like 4 bank tellers, and those bank tellers, they found out later, those bank tellers became very strongly attached and had a psychological alliance to their captors, and they did that for survival. That was kind of an unconscious process to do that out of survival, and you end up having positive feelings for them, feeling sorry for them, all kinds of things. And these are your captors who are abusing you and keeping you hostage. And you end up with that irrational bond with them, or we might say an irrational or transference with the captors. And so they found out that, that this was, this is a very real syndrome that was happening. Well, you can apply those kinds of things to abusive and narcissistic marriages, families, parents. I think there are many families, and excuse me for saying this, there are many families that are cults. They just are. And there are many families in which there probably has been lots of Stockholm Syndrome in there, where we irrationally bond with our parents because we're naturally supposed to anyway as kids, but we bond with this bad parent. And that's very traumatizing. And we will even maintain their integrity as parents, even when they're totally wrong and abusive. And that's kind of a Stockholm syndrome-ish type of behavior and psychological process. But some families are cults, and I can talk to you about many families. I thought it might as well be a cult. I mean, it has all the dynamics of a cult. It just may not be religious. It could be philosophical, or it could be familial. A familial cult. And you darn well better have, these are the leaders, this is what you don't do, this is what you do, you better not, you better not cross the line. Everybody on the outside's bad, everybody on the inside's good. Don't share anything with the outside. Might as well have fences all the way around the house. And so getting back to the question, Lisa, that how do you know if you're suffering Stockholm Syndrome? Rinda has a video, and I wanted to share that with you. It's entitled Narcissistic Abuse and Stockholm Syndrome. So I would recommend that, and that can be found Family Tree Life Coaches or Family Tree Counseling YouTube channel. So you can find her video there, and you can take a look at that. I think many times if we're in the midst of the Stockholm Syndrome, we're not going to be as aware of it because it's an unconscious process. So it's not like I'm going, oh, I know I have Stockholm Syndrome now. That would not make sense. I mean, because if you knew it, you probably wouldn't be doing it. I mean, that's the right. And so it's an unconscious process. Now, I do believe we can be debriefed and deprogrammed, where we begin to recognize, oh my gosh, that's what was happening. And probably Rinda talks about that. And so as we begin to learn more about narcissistic abuse, and as we begin to learn about how we can be mistreated, and we can also stay loyal and faithful to a very unfaithful, unloyal, and abusive marriage, relationship, family of origin, friends. In fact, I have a client right now, his friends, narcissistic abuse. He's got a number of friends that are narcissistic, and one best friend who's awful. And now he's starting to make a change in that. And he was going through, I suppose it could be kind of a Stockholm Syndrome, because he thought it was a good friendship. Then he looks at it and goes, oh my gosh, this is horrible. He never realized how horrible it was. And it was a bad relationship. And in fact, recently there was a marriage in which his that friend was there, and he was just a mess. I happened to attend that wedding, and it was like, oh my goodness, But this was best friend for 15 years, and and it's like we don't see it. We don't see it. So I think you can begin to understand that as you start to thaw out, as you start to unfreeze and start to not be so paralyzed. Then you start seeing the Stockholm Syndrome. She also asked a second question, can you, and I think this is talking about in a marriage, where you have a marriage where a partner might be narcissistic, can you withhold narcissistic supply? That when you withhold narcissistic supply from the husband or from the partner, and as you begin to withhold that narcissistic supply, does it make it easier to divorce them? Well, that's kind of a complicated question. I think if you begin to withdraw or not provide the narcissistic supply for the narcissist, they could do any number of things. They could either love bomb, or they could hate you and rage. They could, cut off from you. They could do all kinds of things. Silent treatment, it can be all kinds of things. Or it could be slowly and more subtle that you are not providing the narcissistic supply for them. And that, certainly that's something we'd want to work on and to achieve to be less of a narcissistic supply for them. Second of all, can it make it easier to divorce them? And I assume you're asking the question, can it make it easier for you? Or did you mean, can it make it easier for them? I don't know that it's going to make it easier for them. They're not going to be happy with being left or divorced. That you're not supposed to have that kind of power. So they're not going to be happy with that because you're crazy and there's no reason, and you're wanting to divorce for no good reason, and look what I've done for you all this time, and you're being selfish and da 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 da. And not looking at how they've been verbally abusive, even physically abusive, threatening, and all those kinds of things. So now, could it make it easier for you to divorce them? I think it could, because as you begin to thaw and as you begin to see and starting to get out of that narcissistic abuse trance, which is kind of that Stockholm Syndrome. It's that narcissistic abuse trance. As you begin to, wake up, and I can't snap my fingers very well, a little bit of arthritis in there, it's a little hard to do that. But I haven't snapped my fingers in a long time. As you begin to snap out of it, then you start seeing that, oh wow, this is not good, and I need to wake up, smell the coffee, which is very hard to do. Your observational blindness starts to go down because you start to see more, and then you need support groups, therapists, coach, help from other folks, friends. You need all of those things during that time, because that's going to support you in overcoming the Stockholm Syndrome, in overcoming the narcissistic abuse and trauma from that. And also, they're going to be a support to you when you kind of get pulled back into the trance again. And I think that excellent book, Healing from a Narcissistic Relationship by Fjellstedt, she wrote two very good books, Stop Caretaking the Narcissist or Borderline, and the other one is Healing from a Narcissistic Relationship. Both very good books, because she brings narcissistic abuse and narcissism information there, as well as family systems. And she puts them together because she's a marriage and family therapist. And the other interesting thing is she's been through it personally. And I really think her books are very good for helping you stay out of that trance that it's easy to fall back into. But he did love me, and I really did love him. And, there were sometimes he was really nice, and we had fun doing that. And, the sex was good occasionally, and da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And am I going to find anybody as good as him, or as good looking as him, or as rich as him? Or, we have all that pulls us back into the relationship, which is a part of the de-selfing process. And that's, somebody asked about de-selfing, and that would be part of the de-selfing, where we just start going right back into the enmeshment or the quicksand, and it starts going down and down and down. In the quicksand, we pull ourselves out of ways, and then we start to get pulled back in. And Fjellstad, Marjorie, I think is her name, F-J-E-L-S-T-A-D, I think is how you spell her name. But you can find it on Amazon. She helps with that process tremendously. Oops, wrong thing. Let's see here. I think we are... I shared about that. I shared about those questions. I'm going to take another drink and relax for a minute. Maybe, and you're probably tired of hearing me by now. And probably tired of hearing me talk. I do want to share with you that, again, you can find my YouTube channel at Jerry Wise Relationship Systems, and you can also communicate with me or join my email list at www.jerrywiserelationshipsystems.com. You can send an email to me at jerrywise5, the number 5, at gmail.com. And I might say, give me a little while to respond to you, because I get a lot of emails, and so it'll take me just a little while. Some people are upset with me because I didn't respond within 24 hours. Well, it can be a week sometimes if things are really busy, and so I hope you'll be patient. And then Jerry Wise Relationship Systems, Facebook, and then there's also, I'm on Twitter as well, under the same name. You can find me at Jerry Wise on Twitter, Jerry Wise Relationship Systems. And I have someone who helps me with my social media, and we try to put up new things for you. I try to put up quotes and helpful information. We've also been working on the possibility of doing some live Wednesday experiences, but it's just been really busy to do that. There's been a lot of people have been very interesting in learning how to really learn to self-differentiate, learn to heal from their abuse and heal from trauma, and also learn about relationship dynamics. If you want to learn about family systems, relationship dynamics, good books are the Harriet Lerner books, Lerner, The Dance of Anger, The Dance of Intimacy. She was one of the first people to start writing in a popular way using Bowen family systems. The other thing is, another author is Roberta Gilbert. She's a psychiatrist, but she really specializes in Bowen family systems. She writes Extraordinary Relationships, which is a very good book. The 8 Concepts of Bowen Theory, which is very good. And she writes about those, and they're easy to read. Then Jenny Brown is also, I think she's from Australia, I believe. Growing Yourself Up. There's also Andrea Schara, Schara. She's also, I think, from Wales or from, not Wales, Australia or New Zealand. And she writes a very good book for learning to self-differentiate. So I wanted to give you those resources. If you email me, which you can, and you can say, hey, Jerry, do you have additional resources? I will list all of the videos I have. I'll tell you all the readings in that email, and I will give you different workshops that are available. And if you want to write to me, I'd be happy to do that. And I really guarantee, if you're ready to change and you read those self-differentiation books, you will walk away from the books changed. I mean, you'll just go, I just can't see the same way I used to see. You just won't be able to see relationships in the same way. Then there's also Brene Brown. She's also a Bowen therapist and is a PhD social worker, I believe. And she, her books, Braving the Wilderness, she has TED Talks on shame, and there's a bunch of topics she's talked about. But I think Harriet Lerner wrote the foreword to Brene Brown's book, Braving the Wilderness. And that's when I knew those two knew each other and were sharing the same. Because I would listen to Brene Brown on TED Talks, TED Talks, and I'd listen to her. I go, how has she got this down so well? How does she understand? Then I find out she's a Murray Bowen Family Systems person, and that's why she comes across very helpful and knowledgeable. She's not just an individualistic way of thinking type of person. Angela writes, I would love to hear more about triangulation and methods of avoiding getting entangled within them. You know, there's a clinical book on triangles. It's about that thick, and all it's about is emotional triangles by Peter Titleman, Titleman. Now, it's very detailed, and it will give you more than you'd ever want to know about triangles. But if you're really interested in really just digging into it, you only have to read a couple pages a day. It's not ununderstandable. It's just, he just goes into real detail about triangles. And that's kind of the, now I think that's kind of the classic, and it's a fairly new book. He also wrote a brand new book called Self-Differentiation. It's about that thick also. And it's just on self-differentiation. Again, it's more for clinicians. It's more for coaches or professionals, but it's not unreadable. I mean, it's not something that, it may be detailed. So if you're, it's kind of academic, but it can be helpful. Back to your question, Angela. How to avoid getting involved in triangles. Well, the first thing you have to do in terms of triangles is to start to be aware of what they are. And we know that triangles come out of the unstable dyad, which then creates a triad. You have two people, and if they're in a relationship, eventually they will become unstable in the system. Something will happen. It's hard to maintain that sense of self-differentiation with another person. And usually somebody will distance, someone will get hurt, someone will do something. And then what do? We add a third party to stabilize this relationship. We add a third person or an issue or something like that to stabilize this relationship. So John goes and talks to Bill about Fred. And now Fred and John can get along better because John went and talked to Bill. And he's dumped all that on Bill. But now Bill has a hard time with Fred. And so these different lines for the triangle They shift in terms of what are stable and what are unstable. And in fact, I have a video on triangles. If you'll write to me, I'll send that to you. There is a video on explaining the dynamics of a triangle. So when you say, how do you avoid that? I was trying to think, how do I know when I feel like a triangle's about to begin? Well, first of all, I think it's kind of obvious. If you're talking about someone who's not present, there may be a good chance you're triangulating. So that's probably a good, because then the person who's upset or who has an issue, who is intense or who has a hurt or whatever, is not dealing directly with the source or with the person. They're dealing with you. And then I always want to know, well, in fact, therapists, coaches are all, we're all targets of triangles. Now, there are healthy triangles and unhealthy triangles. If someone comes and talks about their family of origin, I have the family, I have the client, and I have me. That's a triangle. But I want to make that a healthy triangle, not an unhealthy triangle. The way I make it a healthy triangle is to help them resolve their relationship with the family of origin. Where it becomes an unhealthy triangle is if I get mad at their family for how they treated them. Now it's not a healthy triangle. Now I've become an unhealthy, dysfunctional part of that relationship. So there are healthy triangles and unhealthy. I want to avoid the unhealthy triangles. Certainly I can have a friend come to me. Well, let's say a couple gets divorced. And they come to me, hey, Jerry, I'm going to divorce my wife. Okay, I'm sorry to hear that. Gosh, you guys have been together a long time. I'm very sad. I'm sure you've thought long and hard about it, and and you've gotten help, and you're just to a place of doing that, or whatever. I'm not in your marriage. I don't care how long we've been friends. I haven't walked in your shoes in that marriage for that whole time. So I'm sorry to hear that. If there's anything to do, that's great. But I want you to know I'm going to be maintaining a relationship or a friendship with the both of you. I hope you know that. If that's not okay with you, we may need to talk that through. Because I don't want to get caught up in the triangle where I'm going to hate your wife like you do. Because she hasn't done that to me. I'm not in the relationship with her. I have to have my own relationship with her. Now, I'm not saying she hasn't done all those things, and I'm not saying she's not mean. I'm not saying she's well. Maybe she's crazy. I don't know. But I just don't want to make that determination based on what your experience of the relationship was, because I'm sure you were a part of those dynamics too, in some way. And that's all I'm saying. And so I want to avoid that dynamic if at all possible. So I try to stay neutral with that. Much like when you have older kids and they come to you and say, well, Dad was doing so. Mom, you may want to ask them, I would like you to go and share that with your dad. Certainly if there's abuse or severe problems, or it's a DEFCON 4, then you may need to get involved. But otherwise, I want to redirect so that people can grow in the relationships they have rather than me intervening and me getting caught up in it and me getting caught up in other people's crusades. I don't want to get caught up in your crusades. So I want to be, and when I feel like I'm being recruited for a crusade emotionally, or even in family of origin with family members, if it feels like a crusade or then I'm going, ooh, this could be a nasty triangle. And we could talk a whole evening on triangles, and maybe we should do that at one of our, and we could just talk about the dynamics of triangles. Well, we are coming to the end of our time together. It's almost 9:30. I've shared with you and talked with you and bored you to tears for 90 minutes. and you've been patient enough to listen to me and to hear me out. I've tried to respond to your questions and your comments. I hope, I don't say anything to be mean or criticizing of anyone. And I usually tell people, hey, I'm just sharing with you where I'm at and what I think. Take what you can use and leave the rest, as they say in the recovery program. And I thank you for joining us tonight. I thank you for listening to me. And I wish you the best in your recovery. And you will be seeing me soon, probably in another month, I think, something like that. We'll be doing this again. I appreciate Rhonda Smith for helping me tonight with questions. And we're at the Family Tree Counseling offices right now. And in 2 weeks, it will either be Mark Smith or Rhonda Smith or both doing this live broadcast again on this channel, 8 o'clock on a Tuesday. And I wish you the very best and hope you have a great week. And we are going to sign off for tonight. Thanks again for watching.